Hello everybody, my name is Zaya from 48 Detailing, and to my left we have a 2022 Ford Mustang GT. Now this vehicle is in for a host of services, everything from paint protection film, ceramic coating, and window tint, but what we're going to focus on today is our full front paint protection film application, the actual installation of the film. We're going to be going over all the areas of coverage and also going over how we install this film onto the vehicle. So let's go ahead and jump straight into it. So our silver full front paint protection film application, it is our most popular PPF application to date. Reason being, you're able to get complete coverage on all the high impact areas of your front end, along with the best parts about the full front, wrapped edges. Those are the biggest benefits of a full frontal application. You get complete coverage, and since we're able to do complete coverage, we're able to customize the patterns or custom install PPF on the vehicle to wrap all the edges around the hood, the fenders, all that good stuff, so you have a nice, seamless, and aesthetically pleasing installation. Now compare that to our base level package, which is the bronze PPF application, otherwise known as a partial application, that traditional, more dealership-oriented style installation. You're going to have a seam line that runs across the hood and the fenders over here, not allowing us to wrap all the edges and giving you that really nice, pleasing installation. Now, that is an option for some that are looking to get PPF installed on a budget, and it's still better than not having any type of protection on the vehicle, but it is not our personal preference just because of how it looks and the dirt and grime and contamination that can collect on that edge of the hood and the fender. So the full front is the way to go. This customer is doing a full front in combination with a ceramic coating and some more window tint replacement, so it has complete protection and coverage all the way through on the vehicle. So what's included in our silver full front paint protection film application? Well, of course, all the necessary prep to get the car to the point where it is right now. Again, this is our second day on this vehicle. My technician spent about 6-7 hours just getting everything prepped up and ready to go for the installation. We did the washing, the clay bar treatment, a little bit of chip repair as requested by the customer, and of course some disassembly on the hood to get a proper hood installation as well. So if you want to learn more about preparation before the installation, make sure to check out our video on a Dodge Charger that we worked on. Link is in the description below, where we go into detail on how we get everything ready from start to finish on a PPF installation. The computer stuff, the software stuff, the printing and weeding, the panel prep, the IPA prep, all that good stuff is in that video, so make sure to check it out. But in this video, we're going to go over the actual film installation, laying it down on the car. Now, the areas of coverage on the full frontal is going to be your A-pillars, essentially from the bottom of the windshield to the top of the windshield over here, these painted portions, your side mirrors, your full hood, your full fenders, and of course your full front bumper, headlights, fog lights, side indicators, whatever you have on the front end over there is going to be covered as well. And before we actually get the film from this table to the vehicle over here, where I'm going to show you all the tools and products that we have to get a proper installation. Number one is going to be your slip solution, and then also your tack solution as well. So what the slip solution is going to do for us, it's going to help us clean the surface of the vehicle right before the install, but along with help us maneuver the film where we need it so we can get everything lined up properly on the vehicle. It's just deionized water, with a few pumps of Johnson & Johnson baby soap, which is going to be the best option for a nice streak-free slip solution for paint protection film. From there, we have our tack solution, which is going to be just straight deionized water, but it's going to be hot, straight out of like a coffee maker hot, okay? And then we have them in these two battery-powered sprayers over here, which saves us time and makes the installation a lot easier on our hands and wrists as well. From there, we have a nice big squeegee to go ahead and clean off the surface of the film and clean off the panel that we're going to install the film to right before the installation. As we're talking right now, contamination could be laying on top of this film, and then also the panels over here. We want to make sure we get all that nice and clean with a squeegee and our slip solution before we remove it and expose the adhesive. And next thing we have is our handy dandy tool belt, and within that tool belt we have some nice tweezers to go ahead and remove the film on the edges from the backing sheet over here and other intricate areas that we can't really reach with our fat fingers. And then we have a torch as well to go ahead and heat lock the film on the edges during our final stages of prep after the film is installed. And then from there, we have one of the most important tools in our arsenal, and that is our knife. This is actually my original NT cutter blade, what otherwise known as a red dot, when I start a PPF, okay? It just shows you how durable these things are over here. And inside, we have a stainless steel NT cutter blade. Everything is made in Japan. They're very precise blades meant for the purpose of paint protection film. Very expensive. Right here, what you're seeing is about a $30 to $40 kit that you got going on. So not cheap comparatively to your $1 or $2 blades that you find at Amazon or Walmart, okay? So very, very important to have a nice quality blade to go ahead and properly score the film rather than cutting all the way through and damaging the paint underneath. You want to make sure this blade is in the right hands. It's a lot of skill, a lot of talent, and a lot of experience required to use a blade properly on a vehicle without damaging the paint underneath. And then from there, we have our squeegees. Of course, squeegees are pretty much a personal preference. This is what I like to use. This is for regular panels such as fenders and bumpers. This is more so for larger panels such as hoods. And this is for smaller areas and grills and things of that nature. And this is a small cleaning squeegee. We use this similarly to the large squeegee over here, but for smaller intricate areas where this one does not fit. And the last two items is a nice lint-free waffle weave microfiber towel to go ahead and clean off the panel after an installation and inspect the film. And then of course this brick over here, this rubberized brick, you're probably asking what this is for. Well, this is to keep that hood open and unlatched so we can easily open and close it when we need it, when we're installing film, wrapping edges, and things of that nature. Alright guys, so now it is time to install the film. I'm going to start from the top and work my way to the bottom. The same way as we wash your car, you want to start top to bottom. Reason why, I don't want to install a fender or a door and then install an A-pillar or a roof and have all that contamination and stuff dripping down into the door that I just installed on the edges that are still not locked in. It can seep through into the film, causing contamination to bleed through, right? So we're going to start from the top and work our way from the bottom. First thing we're going to do is the A-pillar over here. I'm going to take my slip solution. I'm going to go and spray it on the surface, okay? And I'm going to take my cleaning squeegee I showed you guys earlier. I'm going to go ahead and clean off that surface I'm going to work on because dust could have collected during our conversation earlier today. Make sure you get the interior edges as well. And I also like to clean out any areas around the panel that I'm working on too. So these plastics over here, I'll go ahead and squeegee the best I can, and also the glass. This is more imperative on larger pieces of film that are difficult to hold, because at times you're just trying to get it on the car so it doesn't fall out of your hand or collect contamination while it's exposed to air, right? And what happens is you get it on the door if you're working on a fender. You get it on the fender if you're working on a door. So you want to make sure that first about 2-3 inches of adjacent paneling or glass is clean as well. So in case it does get on there, you're not picking up any contamination from there as well, okay? So we got the surface cleaned. I'm going to spray it one more time with my slip solution to get it ready to get the film onto there. Alright guys, so right over here we have our A-pillars. We have 1 and 2. Now it's just seeing which one is for the passenger side that we're working on. If I look at it closely, it is going to be this one right over here, and this is going to be for the driver's side, okay? So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go ahead and clean off my hands before I touch this film, okay? I'm going to get some soap on there just to make sure there is nothing on my hands before picking that film up, alright? And then I'm also going to go ahead and clean off the film that I'm about to lift as well. Because again, we're trying to just keep contamination to a complete minimum during the install. From there, I'm going to put my cleaning squeegee away. I'm going to start grabbing the film on the furthest most edge right over here. You can use a tweezer as well if you like, and sometimes I do, depending on the difficulty that it's giving me. Then I spray on my slip solution as I lift, and then we want to quickly move this film to the panel that we're working on. We don't want too much air time, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and move it over. Okay, so you can see I have placed the film on the panel that I'm working on, okay? I had to do it kind of quick just to make sure we don't have too much air time on the adhesive. Now what I need to do is line this film up. You can see the edges that Heather customized to go ahead and wrap into the A-pillar so we can get complete coverage in there. But what I also know Heather did for me, she left me at least one edge to properly line up the film. And that edge is going to be this bottommost edge that is covered by the fender over here, and then also this portion over here that goes into the rubber gasket. So those are going to be my 2 points. This V right over here going this way and this way are going to be the edges that I'm lining up on my A-pillar, and I squeegee it upward, making sure all these areas are lined up as well. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to get a little bit more slip solution to make it a bit easier for me to move around. All right? And then I can go ahead and gently move the film where I need it. Okay? I'm going to grab my squeegee. Yes, we put our squeegees in our mouth, but it's our squeegees, okay? And then when I get it all lined up, I'm just going to gently squeegee. I'm not ramming it in. That's going to move the film and shift the film around on you from where you wanted it lined up. I'm going to gently squeegee it. When I feel that adhesive starting to attack, you see how it's still moving a little bit? And even with that slip solution squeegeed out, the film is still moving up on me, right? So I could squeegee, but I would have to let it sit there if I'm just using straight slip solution. So the next thing we're going to try out is a little bit of our tack solution. I'm going to go ahead and put a little bit more slip over there. I'm going to line it up one more time where I want it. Okay? And then I'm going to take my tack, get a little bit on top so I can warm up that film and adhesive, and a little bit over there on the bottom. Nothing crazy, okay? I still want just enough where I can move it around pretty well, get it lined up where I need it. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and start my squeegeeing, just very light and gentle so I'm not moving around my perfectly lined up film. And I'm going to go ahead and squeegee out the bottom portion as well. Boom, boom, boom. And now if I take my finger, it's not moving around like it was last time. It's still just a little bit, but at least it's grabbed on and set me an anchor point so I could start moving up this way throughout the A-pillar. Okay, so now I got my anchor point over here at the bottom. I'm going to move up this way and get this film lined up as well. I'm going to go ahead and just gently lift up the film, put a little bit more slip over here in the center portion so it can move around easy for me. And then I'm going to go ahead and line up my next corner right over here. I can see that the film wants to wrap in this way, and I'm going to line up right over here along this edge, okay? I'm going to get some hot water there underneath the film too. Move it around. I'm going to use the heat of my finger to get that film to start tacking for me. Hopefully you guys can understand me with the squeegee in my mouth. That corner's tacked now. And now I could see that the film is starting to kind of maneuver towards that windshield because of that light tension we have there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring it back where I need it over here along the edge of this gasket. I'm going to go ahead and do a light squeegee on that body line over there. And then remove that water all the way through. That's going to start tacking for me, and I can work this section upward. I want to line up where I need it. Boom, boom, boom. Okay. All right, guys, so we got the film on the A-pillar all lined up now, looking good. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take my tack solution, that hot water. I'm going to flush out all the edges. Make sure you get all of our slip solution out of there. So any edges that we need to wrap, we can go ahead and get that film to tack properly. And all the other edges, like lining up with the gaskets, when it's time to heat lock, there's no slip solution there that's going to get in the way. Now I'm going to wrap this edge real quick that we extended. So I have a nice seamless finish. And when I'm wrapping the edge, essentially what I'm doing, I'm taking my finger and I'm rolling it in from the outside in. Okay, and what that does is it doesn't let any water come back up from here towards the inside of the film this way. Okay? That prevents bubbles from happening on the leading edge, which is very common if you don't use this technique. And then also, just to double check, I grab my squeegee and I push on that edge just to make sure all that water's out of there. I just continue wrapping that real quick. And you can see how well the film grabs on when all that slip solution is completely out of there. Work my way down and then work my way back up. Boom, boom, boom. There you go. 8 pillars down. All right, so we installed our first piece of film on the Mustang. Woo-hoo! Now it's time to get the rest done, right? So even though this film is installed, it's still not completely done. Reason being, it's a freshly installed piece of film. There's still going to be a little bit of moisture on the edges, so we got to wait for that to evaporate and completely disperse before we can get a little bit of heat on the edges to make sure all the edges and all the wrapped edges tack down properly, okay? So that is all set to go for now until we're done installing on the rest of the vehicle, and then we come back to where we started and we make sure to put a little bit of heat on the edges to make sure it all tacks down. Next portion I'm going to do is a side mirror over here. Side mirrors are going to be the more difficult portion of the vehicle to do besides the bumper and some areas on the hood that are pretty intricate, but these can be the bane of your existence at times. This side mirror specifically is not the easiest just because you have this really hard line and this very sharp point over here, but I'm going to show you how we tackle this doing a custom bulk installation. All right guys, now it is time for the side mirrors, okay? Now, like I said before, these can be difficult at times, but we'll try to tackle it the best we can, and I'll try to explain it to you the best I can as well. Side mirrors can be a hit or miss. Sometimes you can get them in one piece, meaning one piece of film will get complete coverage on the side mirror, and sometimes you have to do two. There are so many complexity when it comes to different types of side mirrors. A perfect example is like a Corvette C6 or a Mazda Miata. The side mirrors on those are like wrapping a football, so you can't get complete coverage with one piece of film because as that curvature starts to happen, the film starts to bunch up together and finger, and even if you do get it down, it's most likely going to lift. So you need to find a balance when it comes to your side mirrors. You want to make sure you get as much coverage as you can, of course, on the high impact area, so this front facing portion, but at the same time you want to make sure you're not stretching the film to a point where it's going to start pulling back on you in the future or completely thin out the film, not really giving the side mirror any protection. So me personally, I would rather have two pieces on a side mirror if it prevents it from lifting back on me and also prevents me from having to overstretch the film completely on the high impact area, not really providing any protection to the paint underneath, okay? So right over here on the windshield, I have a large bulk piece of film, okay? This is from a 10-inch roll. This is typically what we use on side mirrors. You can see it's going to cover the side mirror completely. Now we have to form it and shape it to the mirror that we're working on. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and clean off my side mirror real quick with my pink cleaning squeegee. I'm going to get the inside, get the leading edge, and then work it outside this way. And also this interior portion over here and the plastic underneath. All right, so we got it cleaned up. Now we'll put a little bit more slip solution. And then I'm also going to take a product called PPF gel. This is specifically a gel made for paint protection film. What a gel does, it sits on the surface, as you can see, and doesn't run down. And it's an alcohol-based gel, meaning when I squeegee it, that film is going to tack. But it also helps that film move and stay where I want to. So it's kind of a mix between a slip solution and a tack solution. So it helps me maneuver that film and have it stick where I want to without having any adhesive stretch left behind. So all these hard edges, I'm going to make sure I get the gel on there. And then I'm going to peel the backing off the film. Spray some slip solution on my film as well. And we're going to lay it down on the side mirror, just like that. Okay, I'm going to just have it sit there for a second. I'm going to switch the camera angle so you have a better view. All right, guys. So what I want to do now is I want to see how this film is actually going to sit on the surface. I actually have a little piece of contamination over here I'm going to remove real quick. See? Even in that really quick, fast process of squeegeeing, and then applying the film, contamination can happen, okay? That's why we just want to be vigilant on what's going on with our film. So my problem points mainly are going to be this portion over here, this corner. You see how that's fingering up? So I got to stretch this film in a way where I get rid of that access over here, but also make sure to have enough film to get on the bottom portion of the side mirror. I'm going to try to get this done in one piece. We might have to do it in two, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and heat up my film, all right? Just like that. Make sure I'll be able to stretch it really well. I'm actually going to tack this portion over here, right there. This is going to be my anchor point right here, okay? Just like that. Then what I'm going to do is put some gel right to about there on the whole side mirror. I'm going to heat up the film again. And I'm also going to put a little bit of tack underneath over here because I'm going to have to tack there. I'm going to go ahead and try to pull this film, hook it around this way, hook it around that way. Okay? Tack that edge right there to keep that film where I need it. And then I'm actually going to lift this portion back up. It's not completely tacked. You saw how easy that came off? I'm going to go ahead and put a little bit more gel, some hot water. I'm going to come back this way. I'm going to stretch that out just enough, just like that. I'm going to tack it with the gel. Just like that. Okay, after I get that tacked, I'm going to get all this excess gel and solution squeegeed out. And you can see how we conform that side mirror really well with the paint protection film. Boom. So now we just have this portion over here, okay? I'm going to have to make sure that all this goes down properly, that I have just enough stretch where we won't have too much excess and fingering problems. So now I'm going to go ahead and work from the bottom. I'm going to get some hot water in there. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to roll my squeegee just like I showed you on the A-pillar, just to make sure I don't get any water in this hard edge stuck in there. I'm going to roll it in. You can see I have a little bit of fingering, but they're going to go down, and there's not that much tension on those fingers, so they won't pop back up. And trust me, you'll know when you have way too much tension on a finger. It's super, super tight of a finger, and it just automatically wants to come back up on you. A little bit more hot water and tack. Boom, boom, boom. Those fingers are down. I'm going to get this finger down as well, and that's set to go. All right, guys, so we had great success with the side mirror. Got complete coverage on the front end over here. This whole top section and the bottom section is covered. I have a little bit of fingering over here, but it's fresh film, and you can see these fingers are not too tight. It's almost like a U. If it's like a triangle, like a V, that's when I'm going to run into issues. But because it's like a U, I know I'm going to get a little bit more hot water, and as that film starts to dry, that finger is going to tack down, okay? And I also know that my stretch was going this way and this way. It was not going up and down. So these aren't really tension point fingers. They're just a little bit of excess film tightening up on itself, and I'll make sure that goes down. But complete coverage on the front end. You're probably asking yourself, what are we going to do about this film? I'm going to go ahead and get this film to tack as far as I can into the side mirror over here, and then we're going to go ahead and cut around by hand, giving us a nice clean finish. Okay, so we get complete coverage on the high impact area over here, and then we get this curvature and this hard line covered as well over here, okay? All right, guys, now it is time to go ahead and trim off the excess film on the side mirror and finish the side mirror up. What I did was I went to the driver's side, I applied that side mirror, and now I'm back to the passenger side over here. I want to let that film sit here for a few minutes and conform onto the side mirror so it doesn't bounce back on me essentially after stretching out that film, okay? If you just install the film and then you just jump straight into cutting, what you'll find is a lot of those tension points are going to start to pull back on you. You need to let that film conform onto the actual side mirror before making your cuts. So now what I'm going to do, I'm going to take my knife, I'm going to get a new blade. I always do this. I'm going to take my blade, I'm going to toss the first one in the garbage can, okay? So now I have a fresh blade over there, okay? Now I'm going to go ahead and score the film. What do I mean by scoring? I'm not cutting through the film. I'm just scoring the top portion. And what do I mean by that? We'll do it on the plastic over here so you have a good example. I'm going to take my knife. You hear that squeak? Listen carefully. That is a squeak I'm wanting to hear. That means I'm just cutting through the top layer of the film and not all the way through, okay? So what do I mean by that? You see, I can take this film right now, I'm pulling on it. It did not cut all the way through. I did not touch the plastic underneath. But if I come over here on the edge and I pull, there's my cut line right there, perfectly straight, okay? That's what I'm looking to do on the paint as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my knife again from the interior edge, the furthest point where I wrapped. And when I get to this excess portion, I can go through, and then all I need to do is gently pull that film up, just like that. And you can see I scored the film. I cut through on this excess portion where there's no risk to the paint, and then I remove that film from there, and we have a nice, perfectly straight line, and we'll do it to the rest of the side mirror as well. So I'm going to maneuver the side mirror real quick, just so it's a bit easier for me. Just like that. Okay. And then we're going to go ahead and work on this section down this way and this way. One thing to take note, you see how we have excess over here? You see how it's bunching up? What I need to do is I need to make a tension relief point over here on this edge. Essentially, we'll be cutting this way, then this way, and this film will come around this way and lay down properly, okay? But first I'm going to start over here. I'm going to go towards my body real quick. I'm going to make a little U. And then back away from my body again. Okay, just like that. And then I'm going to go ahead and just go ahead and lift off the film, just like that. I'm going to grab my tweezer. And cut away that U that I just made. All right, I'm going to remove that excess real quick. And these fingers over here, I'm just going to take my squeegee. Whoop. Try not to drop it. I'm going to go ahead and squeegee those down. Just like that. Okay. And now this will go ahead and lay down because I've removed all that tension from the excess film. Just like that. And now I have a nice, easy cut all the way through this way. All right, guys, and the side mirror is pretty much completely done. So I've been at these side mirrors for about a little over 45 minutes now, almost an hour. You can see just these two small pieces are actually some of the most complex that you need to do. I can lay down a Fender in a matter of 15 to 20 minutes, but a side mirror is going to take me about 20 to 30 depending on the complexity. But we got them down. Now it's just time to let them dry. After we let them dry, we go ahead and heat lock and make sure there's no fingers coming back up, but it's all set to go. And the way you know you don't have too much excess stretch on a side mirror is that for the most part, right after you're done with your trimming, pretty much all your edges are laying down. They're not immediately bouncing back up on you, okay? So this is looking really good. We'll do a final touch-up and heat lock on it after everything else is installed. But let's go ahead and move on to the hood installation. All right, Now it is time for our hood installation. So we got the A-pillars, we got the side mirrors, we're working our way from top to bottom. Now it's time to install the hood. So first thing we got to do is get our 60-inch roll because we got a pretty large hood that we're working with, and we have to measure the width of the hood to see how much film we need for our four-corner tack method, which I'll go into in just a second. All right, guys, so I have my tape measure right over here. We're going to measure the width of the hood. The reason why I want to measure the width, typically the length is covered by the size of the roll that you're using. So when we're doing a hood installation, we use typically two sizes of rolls, a 60-inch roll or a 50-inch roll. What do I mean by that? I have a 60-inch roll like you guys saw on the table over here. The length, which is 60 inches, is going to cover the length of the hood. Now we need to measure the width, okay? So I'm going to put this roll back down over here. Let's go ahead and start measuring the width of this hood. What I want is about 4 inches of excess on both left and right sides of the hood, okay? If you're doing this alone, you're going to go ahead and get that 4 inches. I'm going to go ahead and hold it with my finger over here. And then I'm just going to continue to hold it with my finger as I move, okay? All right. So this hood is going to be about 74 inches total. Now, you're asking, why do we have 4 inches of excess or so on each side? The reason why we have it is we need a little bit of material to pull and tack onto the fenders and the bumpers over here. The second reason is, if you have a hood with valleys, that film is going to need to feed into the valleys. So it's kind of like curly hair, right? You see a girl with some curly hair, when she straightens that hair is much longer straight than it would be curled. So with the valleys, deep valleys like on GMC and Chevy trucks or Mustangs and things like that, you got to remember the film is going to feed into those valleys, so you need a little bit more than what you're typically measuring on the hood like this, okay? That's why we have 4 inches of excess on each side, so we have enough material to pull, stretch, and feed when we need it. All right, so we're back to our table with our 60-inch roll of film. Now we're going to go ahead and measure 74 inches, and get that cut out, okay? I'm going to remove our tape off the film real quick. And then I'm going to go ahead and pull the film out. And prior to doing this, of course, I made sure to squeegee the table that I'm working on. We did that this morning when we came in, so it's nice and clean. So there's little amount of contamination that we're dealing with on the top portion of the film, okay? I'm going to pull that out, and then I'm going to go and start measuring 74 inches. Flatten that out a bit. Need a few more inches. We're at 71 right now. That is 74 total. Flatten that out. I'm going to make my cut right around here. So we got 74 inches total measured out, and that's going to be my cut point right over here, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and take my knife. I'm going to start from the center and then work my way down. It's okay if I have an extra half an inch or a quarter of an inch, no big deal. I'd rather have more film than too little film. And then I follow through from the center this way. Now it is time to do our final squeegee before we lay down the film on the hood. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my slip solution, excuse me, I'm going to go ahead, thoroughly spray down the hood all the way through. I'm going to take my squeegee, I'm going to go ahead and spray that down as well. I'm going to give it a nice, good, clean swipe, just like that. Now I'm going to start from the center and do a nice squeegee all the way through, just like that. You can bring it up as well. Just follow the body lines the best you can and try to get complete coverage with the squeegee. On tighter areas, you can get your smaller squeegee. Get that covered as well. Just like that. I'll squeegee that through the vent this way. I'll do the same thing on the other side as well, okay? Again, this is to make sure any kind of dust or contamination that kind of floated while we were installing on the side mirrors or the A-pillars is all off of the panel. Now we're going to go ahead and prep up the film over here. And the first thing I want to do is make sure to spray the bottom portion with my slip solution, okay? And lay it nice and flat. The reason why I want to do this is that slip solution is going to create a suction effect to the film, making sure it doesn't bunch up on me when I'm lifting up the backing sheet, okay? This is super imperative, especially if you're working alone. If you're working with two people, it's a bit easier, but if you are solo, this is going to be a really great help especially when you're working with a big piece of film like this. And of course, we're going to go ahead and spray our slip solution onto the hood over here before we apply the film to the hood. But this time, instead of squeegeeing it, we're just going to leave it there, okay? This is going to help us maneuver the film and not let that adhesive tack onto the paint as we're stretching the film where we need it to be, okay? And then one little tip from me to you, if you have a pretty difficult hood that you're working with a lot of valleys, hard edges, and things like that, you can use a little bit of gel on those areas to make sure to prevent that film from prematurely tacking on there. So all these hard edges over here, I'm actually going to spray a little bit of gel, just like that. And also this front portion, because I know I'm going to have to do a little bit of stretch over here to make sure we get complete coverage with our 60-inch roll. And now it is time to remove the backing sheet from the actual paint protection film. Just like that, I'm going to take my slip solution, I'm going to spray onto the actual film itself. I'm going to go all the way through on this edge, get slip solution underneath there. And then I'm going to start completely removing the backing as I spray my slip solution on. And watch this, how smooth this backing is going to come off because we've created that suction effect underneath, okay? I'm just going to do a nice pull as I'm spraying. As I'm pulling downward and back. I'm not pulling upward and back, okay? That's just gonna ruin the suction cup effect of the film. So I'm pulling downward and back. And you wanna make sure you're working pretty quick because I have exposed film right now. And the longer it stays exposed, the more risk to contamination. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and carry my film to the hood real quick, as smooth and as easy as possible. Okay. And you see me touching the film, and you should also notice that I'm focusing on the outside of the film as I'm touching. I want to make sure I'm not touching the interior of the film. These are all exterior edges that are going to be trimmed and cut off. So it's okay if I touch that, and it's okay if there's a little bit of contamination there. Now I can go ahead and move this film into place. So we got the film onto the hood, and now I'm just going to go ahead and move it into place real quick. Just like that. And what I want to do is make sure I get this film to lay as flat as possible on the hood and also have even excess on each side, passenger and driver. All right, so we are looking pretty darn good. I got just enough, about 3 to 4 inches on this side. And about 3 to 4 inches on this side as well. So now what I'm going to do is called the 4-corner tack. Essentially what you're going to be doing is creating extra hands during the film installation. I'm going to go ahead and tack one side, then stretch just slightly to the other to remove this excess film that we're dealing here, and then stretch this way and stretch that way, 4-corner tack essentially. But those tack points are basically going to hold on to the film on the fender area and the bumper and headlight to make sure I can evenly stretch this film, getting rid of all these fingers and get the whole thing laid down. So I'm going to make my first tack point over here on the fender, not on the hood. I do not want to tack the hood. Reason being is we're going to stretch a bit forward that way. If you have a tack point on the hood, you're going to have an adhesive line or adhesive stretch over here. So I want to make sure that the hood area still has plenty of soap. And if it's drying up on you, just lift like that and get it soaped down. And then I'm going to tack the film over here on the fender. And how I do that is I get a little bit of hot water or my tack solution. I'm going to lay it down right there. I'm going to grab my squeegee and get it tacked onto the fender so it's not moving up on me, okay? Just like that. There. Now I'm going to do the same thing on the driver's side over here, except I'm going to give it a little bit of stretch to flatten that film over here. Tack this side as well on the fender. Perfect. All right. Now we go ahead and move on to the next tack points. All right, guys, so I'm going to go ahead and make my next tack points right now. So one thing to take note of, on the Ford hood, we're about 1/2 inch short right now. You can see a little sliver over here. I want to make sure that we just slightly pull that film forward to make sure we get complete coverage, okay? So there's 2 ways to do this. You can pull from the middle, all right, and try to get it tacked onto the hood. It's not my personal preference because, like I mentioned before, you tack on the hood, you start moving the film around, stretching other ways, you're going to have adhesive lines on that tack point over there. So I want to do gentle stretches and try to get it tacked to the headlight over here instead. And what's that going to do? As I pull on this corner and I pull on that corner, this center is going to gently come down, giving me about 1/4 inch of film, which is going to be a perfect amount. While I'm doing that, I want to make sure I stretch out this excess amount of film over here to follow the curvature of the front clip of the hood, right? Same thing on that side. So not only are we pulling downward, we're also pulling left and right to get this to even out. So I got to move a bit fast here because we don't want this film to start tacking on the center of the hood, causing tack marks. So I'm going to go ahead and spray this portion with my tack solution. And a little tip, a little trick, I'm going to take my microfiber towel. I'm going to dry off this headlight portion over here. I'm also going to dry off the film that's going to tack onto the headlight, okay? Just like that. I'm going to go ahead and take my film. I'm just going to do a slight stretch this way, okay? I'm watching those fingers, seeing where they're going. Just like that. I'm also watching over there. I see that huge finger coming up over there. But I'm not worried about that because as I pull that way, that's going to disperse that way as well. I'm going to go ahead and get this to tack onto the headlight over here the best I can. Just going to hold on to that for a second. Sometimes you just need a little bit of patience just to get that to tack. There we go. It's holding on. Now I'm going to go ahead and move on to that side and do the same exact thing. I'm going to do a little stretch. You see a finger in the center of the hood disappearing? I'm going to hold that as well. So a few things to keep in mind when you're doing this type of stretch to a hood, any bulk custom application that you're working on. If you have valleys, you want to make sure it's not a trampoline. You could see as I gently push down, I'm still able to touch the paint underneath. If you have too much stretch, too much pull, you won't be able to get valleys down properly, causing a lot of adhesive stretch marks and fingering as well. So it is an extreme balance. You gotta be able to read the film overall. But now that these 4 corners are going to be pretty much tacked in a second, we're going to be able to squeegee out all that slip solution and get this whole puppy laid down pretty quick, okay? All right, guys, so now I can go ahead and start squeegeeing the center and then working my way left to right. You can call this squeegeeing, you can call this glassing, but I'm essentially just pushing out all the slip solution from the hood, okay? Just like that. And I want to make sure I'm doing overlapping motions, just going back and forth to make sure all that water's out of the hood. You could take a little bit of slip solution and spray it lightly on the top, just to make sure your squeegee rolls on the film a lot easier. I'm going to go ahead, just continue the squeegeeing process. And don't be afraid to use a little bit of pressure and speed. Paint protection film is pretty durable, and you'd be surprised at how much pressure you can put on your squeegee and not cause any problems to film at all. All right? Now, I'm going to have to go ahead and get rid of some of these fingers. And how I'm going to do that is I'm going to pull to the driver's side this way. So you can see this excess film over here, not a problem at all. Actually, I want a little bit of that here because we need to feed this valley, okay? So I'm going to go ahead, take my film, and just gently stretch it to the fender. I'm going to start feeding this valley inward, okay? And as I'm feeding it, it's going to start tacking down really well. Use my hand just slightly to get rid of some of the air, just like that. Just looking to see if I'm dealing with any contamination. Just some light chips that we got going on from the repair. Take a little bit of my tack solution. I'm going to spray on the areas that are just not tacking for me. Put a little bit of tension there. Take my hand, feed that valley. Just like that. A little bit of tack over here as well. Do a nice hard pass within this valley just to make sure all that water is completely out. All right, guys, I'm going to do the same thing on this side. Make sure to squeeze out all the solution on the center portion. I want to make sure I get to these center portions first. Reason being is if they start to dry out in the center and it starts to tack and that water won't come out, I need to lift basically one whole side of the hood to get more solution there. That's going to result in contamination and stuff like that, which we do not want. That's why you want to get to these center portions before they tack. And a great example, because I'm recording a video, see, as I'm pushing that solution to this edge, the water does not want to come out on that edge. It keeps going up and down, right? See that? Try and push it, it goes up. This edge is pretty much getting to a point where it's completely tacked. So I need to make sure I work pretty quick to get all that water out. And I'm going to feed it to the areas that are not tacked. I call them exit points, okay? These fingers, I'm going to do a little bit of a pull. Get that to lay flat over there. Do one hard pass through there. I'm going to lock this out too. Just like that. Take it to an exit point. See how grabby that was? See how grabby that is? That film is starting to tack on this portion, so I need a little bit more soap. I'm going to go ahead and spray. Get some soap in there. Just like that. And now I can go ahead and pull, squeegee. I'm not doing hard pulls. I'm doing very, very light pulls, okay? And I'm going to feed this valley. Find an exit point right there. Okay. Now we're going to work on these last tack points that we have over here on the front of the passenger and driver side, okay? So I'm looking at the film, I'm reading it. One thing I'll notice, there's a little bit too much tension right now with this tack point, just like we saw on that other tack point over there with that valley. We also have some fingers over here. You see this finger accumulating? It's not a sharp finger though, you see? As I go on it, it pretty much goes down, which is good. That's what I want. If it's sharp, or if it's too much material, it's not going to go down, but it's laying down pretty flat. So what I'm going to do is, I'm actually going to go ahead, keep that tacked. I'm going to get these fingers down, okay? See how those are going down pretty well? And I have a little bit too much right there. So I'm going to lift that back up. I'm going to get a little bit of hot water underneath there, or our tack solution, whatever you'd like to call it, okay? What's this going to do? It's going to activate the adhesive and heat up the material for me to give it just a very, very light stretch. So light, just to get it nice and flat. Just like that. You see how those fingers are dispersing now? And I'm going to go ahead and squeegee that. And I'm working it towards the edge. I don't want to go whoosh. What that's going to do is it's going to crunch up your fingers and cause a crease. Okay, so I'm working the fingers towards the edge like this. Same thing, I'm going to lift this portion up. I'm just going to push it towards the edge and have it lock in. After the fingers are down, I can go ahead and squeegee out that edge. You'll be perfectly fine, okay? See that? We got all those fingers down. Now it's time to go ahead and work on this section over here. What I'm going to do is, I'm going to go ahead and just slightly lift up this film, just like that, okay? And this has been sitting here for a while, so I want to get a little bit of soap solution in there, just in case, so we don't have any kind of adhesive marks left over because of premature tack. And then I'm just going to wiggle the film to a point where it's laying down pretty flat. Then I'm going to take my squeegee, I'm going to squeegee one corner, and squeegee out everything around it. Okay? After that corner's pretty much tacked, I'm going to do the same thing here, just a little bit of stretch. Just like that. Anywhere that's coming up on me, I'll take a little bit of my tack solution all along this edge to make sure we get it to properly tack. And all that's going to tack nice and smoothly. There we go. Same thing on this side, guys. This is actually a little bit better than the side over there. It looks like we got our stretch down a bit better over here. I'm just going to have to lift this up gently, put a little bit of slip, a little bit of tack, and it's going to go down very easily. I'll make this one quick. Same thing. Go towards the edge. I'm then go ahead and make sure all the moisture is out of the edges. Tack where you need to. Boom, boom, boom. All right, guys, now for the vents, we leave the best for last, okay? The reason why I left the vents for last is because I have an exit point right over here, okay, where the actual vent is leading into the hood. So I don't have to worry about water getting trapped in necessarily. Now, the question is, what if you left it for too long and most of your soap solution is evaporated? Well, the nice thing is, what we're going to do is we're going to make a cut around over here, and we can put more slip where we need it to go ahead and get this laid down. So first thing I'm going to do is just get as much down as I can initially. Okay, just like that. Same thing this way. I'm going to try to get as much down as I can initially. Just like that. I'm going to take my knife real quick, and I'm going to go ahead and make a circle. As I'm making the circle, I want to make sure I leave excess. I don't want to cut all the way this way. I want to just do it right in the middle. And I also want to make sure, as I'm creating my circle, I'm not leaving a hard cut line within that circle. What I mean by that, I want it to be even all the way throughout. You do not want a hard cut line where it's a sharp end point to your cut, kind of like that. The reason why is if you do some stretch, you do have to pull on that film this way to feed that valley. A hard cut line like that is going to start to what? Tear on you, just like that, and that could tear into your perfectly good hood installation over here. So you want to make sure there is no hard cut line to the circle. It's all nice and even. Just like that. All right. So now what I can do is if I need more slip solution, because I have an opening now, I can go ahead and spray that in where I need it. Just like that. Okay. And then a nice easy way just to maneuver that slip solution where I need it is just like this. You just take your hand and you move it where you need it, okay? Now, I'm going to take my tack, I'm going to heat up the top of the film so it gets stretched a little bit easier, and I'm going to feed these valleys. All right? I'm going to start from the bottom and work my way up. So I'm going to go ahead and take my fingers and start to get this to tack down. I'm going to feed it to what I like to call a checkpoint. A checkpoint is typically like an edge point where I can get it locked in so soap and water does not come rolling back down into the rest of the hood. Essentially what I'm trying to do. Getting it to my checkpoint, which is this hard leading edge right over here. That's bouncing back on me. That's just telling me I need more tack solution. There's too much soap in there and not enough tack. Just like that. I'm going to do the same thing again. I'm going to go ahead, squeegee out all this water. See how that's tacking now? And I'm going to feed it to my checkpoint over here. Make sure there's no water coming back on me. All right. So now what I'm going to do, I'm going to do the same thing with these valleys and feed it downward. So I'll make sure I get to my checkpoints over here. Make sure they're not coming back up. So now I'm going to take my tack solution, just like that. Heat up the top. I'm going to take my hand and feed it in that way. To a checkpoint. It might bounce back on you. That's very normal. You just want to hold it with one hand while you squeegee with the other until it gets completely tacked. Trying to get it to my checkpoint over here. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make another cut over here. Release some of this tension. So now that I've released a little bit of tension over here, it's going to go down a lot easier for me. There we go. Don't worry about this finger. The vent ends over here. I'm going to trim all this excess off. There won't be a finger there anymore. I'm going to do the same thing on that side. All right, so we got this side down over here, and now it's time to do that portion of the valley over there, okay? So I'm gonna need a little more slip. Move it around a little bit. Make sure you get it all up in there. A bit of hot water over here. I'm gonna feed that in, just like that. Nope, nope, nope. Get back down there. There we go. So I got the valley down. I was making sure I don't have any excess moisture within those valleys. Now let's go ahead and clean that up a little bit. Done and done. Woo! The hard part is over. The hood is down and it's looking great. One final thing I'm gonna do is just wipe it down with a microfiber towel just to do a final inspection on the hood installation. Just like that. The reason I want to do this is I want to take note of any excessive moisture if I do have any. And if I'm able to take it out right now before that adhesive really starts to tack down, I also want to take note of contamination as well, okay? That's another thing I want to keep in mind. So we do have a couple light bubbles here and there, very, very tiny amount of moisture, but as I'm peering through, it's nothing excessive. Most of it will just go away on its own naturally, or I can go ahead and just take my syringe and poke them out pretty easily. So that's something to keep in mind. One thing I'm looking for again is contamination, and it's looking like a very, very clean install. I am not seeing any type of contamination on the hood right now. So since this is a custom application on this hood, we have to trim off all the excess that we have on the surrounding areas of the hood. So first thing I'm gonna do is get a couple of these fingers down that came back up. I'm gonna lift the film off the windshield and just go ahead and squeegee those down the best I can, okay? And it's okay if it comes back up, it's not a big deal, we can always get them later. But I wanna get them down as good as I can. Next thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go ahead and grab my red dot blade, all right? I'm gonna put my satchel to the side so we make sure we don't rub up on the car. And then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go ahead and take my blade, and I want about 1/4 of an inch of access so we can wrap it underneath. It's a balance. You don't want too much film where it starts flapping on you and it's not bonding properly, but you want just enough to go ahead and wrap on the inside, okay? So I'm gonna take my blade. As you can see, I'm not cutting on the paint. I'm cutting on the outside where there's nothing underneath. And I'm gonna go ahead and leave myself about 1/4 of an inch, and I'll try to make the line as straight as possible. And also follow the curvature of the hood as well, to the best of my ability. I'm gonna pick up, I'm gonna give it a bit of tension to make my cut a bit easier. And I'll follow that curvature of the hood, just like that. Run that all the way through. I'm gonna do the same thing on the other side as well. So I'm gonna go ahead and take my knife, pick up where I left off. I'm gonna go ahead and make my cut. With my left hand, I'm creating a little bit of tension so it's easier for my blade to cut through the film. Even though this looks simple, it takes a bit of practice, because if you're not paying attention or focusing on your cut or how that hood is curving, you could cut through the film completely and completely ruin the 1 hour, 2 hour installation that you just made on your hood, and there goes $300–400 worth of film and 2–3 hours of your time. So you want to make sure you take your time with this. All right, guys, so now it is time to go ahead and cut off all this excess over here around the vent. So I want you to pay attention. You can see the friction point of the vent on the paint over here. That is the exterior edge of it. So I want to cut on the inside of that. So I'm going to go ahead and score the film. Make sure we hear that squeak. Now, even though nobody's going to be seeing the cut underneath the vent over here, you still want to make sure it's looking good, you know? So I want to make sure I'm making nice, smooth, straight lines for my cut. Following the curvature of where the vent is going to lay. This is where your tweezers come into play. Help you go ahead and lift that film after scoring. Got one more cut I have to do over there. And you're probably asking, hey Zay, how do you know if you're scoring the film besides the noise? You know, how do you practice that? Well, that's what you got to do. You got to practice. It takes time and a lot of skill. I'm basically using the weight of the knife with a little bit more pressure on areas I need it, and I light it up on areas I know I won't need it at, right? So a perfect example is scoring on a perfectly flat area like this with no tension or no stretch. I'm gonna need a little bit more pressure, but as I get closer to the areas that we had a little bit more tension, a little bit more stretch, where that film is starting to thin out, I need to lighten up that blade, because that film is just slightly thinner than the area that doesn't have tension in. So that's a perfect example. You'll find that a lot on these types of areas, side mirrors, things like that. If I try to use the same amount of pressure as I would on a flat area with no tension, when I get to those tension points where that film will stretch just slightly, you're gonna cut through and damage the paint underneath. So little things like that you have to take note of during your scoring of your film. All right, guys, so A-pillar side mirrors and hood are down on the Mustang. We're gonna let those sit. We're gonna let them relax. We're gonna let them dry out. We wanna make sure all that water starts to evaporate before we wrap all of our edges and everything like that. While that's happening, we're gonna move on to the fender installation, okay? So for the fender, we're doing a customized pattern. What do I mean by that? On the hood, on the side mirrors, we did a completely custom bulk application, meaning we used a complete piece of film, we applied it to the vehicle, and then we hand cut all the excess off of that piece of film where we needed to. The difference between that and a customized pattern is we're still gonna use a pattern, but we've extended the edges, top, bottom, and on the inside where it meets the door. That's gonna give us the same results as a custom bulk application, but saves us on material and time and makes the installation a little bit easier as well. So what helps us be more efficient is going to give you a better value oriented package as well with better price points. So that's where we're going to proceed onto the fender right now. I'm going to show you that installation real quick. All right, guys, so I just got some fresh slip solution and also some fresh hot water as well. We're going to go ahead and clean off the panel that we're working on over here, which is going to be the fender. I'm going to go and spray it down with my slip solution. One thing you'll notice is Heather went ahead and removed the emblem on the fender as well. So we do perform emblem removals with our packages too. It is going to depend on the vehicle. Some emblems, sadly, we cannot remove because of the risk of damage on certain types of paints and also certain types of vehicles. If you are willing, after the warning, to still remove the emblem, we're more than happy to do it for you, but sometimes it is out of our control, especially on repainted body panels and also especially Teslas, Mazdas, Subarus. For some reason, during the manufacturing process, we believe that they prematurely toss on the emblem with the adhesive while the paint still has not completely cured. And what happens is that adhesive becomes almost one with the clear coat in the paint and peels off as we're removing the emblem. So it's something to keep in mind. There's certain vehicles where it is risky to do emblem removal. But on Fords and most cars out there, 80% of the cars that we work on, it's not an issue at all, so we can get a better overall finish with the installation, okay? So went ahead and cleaned off the surface of the fender. I'm also going to clean off the door as well, just to make sure, in case if that film touches the door, we won't have any issues. I'm going to spray on my slip solution, and I'm going to go ahead and grab our fender and toss it onto the panel. All right, guys, so I got my fender over here. I want to make sure we get it on the surface as fast as we can. Excuse the squeegee in the mouth. There we go. Boom, boom, boom. I'm just going to put a little bit of pressure with my hand just to make sure the heat of my hand activates that adhesive just slightly and allows me to grab the squeegee I need to go ahead and start installing. So when it comes to fender removals, we start from the top and work our way downward and then over to the front clip of the front end, okay? The reason why we do that, we always have a start edge over here on the top, meaning there's always one single edge with a corner that isn't completely wrapped that we can properly line up to make sure everything else falls in place properly, okay? So I'm gonna show you that up close and personal. All right, guys, so you could see over here, there's the corner right there, and then this leading edge over here that doesn't completely wrap, all right? And that helps us line up all the other edges that are gonna wrap for us. So I'm gonna go ahead and tack that down, get this valley down, and everything else is gonna fall in place pretty easily. I want to make sure I get my line up perfect, all right? Because if you get it right here, everything else is going to fall in place like butter. Get this squeegee down, get inside right there, okay? And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to feed that film. What I'm going to do is I'm going to feed that film downward like that, nice and gentle. Not using too much pressure, just enough. Start to get it to tack. And you can see this excess over here. I'm going to lift from the bottom like that. I'm just going to have that fall naturally past that body line. Just like that. I want to get it past that body line or that checkpoint that we're working on. And I'm just going to let that fall naturally, okay? All right, guys, so this fender has been sitting there for some time over here, so I'm going to have to lift it back up and soap it down so I can move it around a little bit, okay? I'm going to go ahead and grab my slip solution, all right? And then what I'm going to do is I'm not going to grab the portion of the film that's going to be on the paint. I'm going to grab the portion of the film that's wrapping on the inside. So if there is any chance of contamination from my finger to that film, it can be easily removed from the wrapped edge and have no risk of being on the paint itself. So lift that up. And now what I need to do is I need to maneuver this film in the way where I get this whole interior edge lined up with this body line that meets the fender and the headlight over here. And how I'm going to do that is I'm going to warm up the film to make my stretch a bit easier. And I'm going to get some tack solution over here on that leading edge. I'm going to grab my squeegee. And then I'm going to line up the bottom portion and then the top. So after you get that portion lined up and tacked, you can move to the top. And what this is called is incremental stretch. Essentially, it's going from point A to point B to point C to point D, and then flush everything out from there. Incremental stretch is very important. I feel like where a lot of people struggle with a PPF installation, they're going from point A and jumping to point D. You want to make sure you take it step by step, because that is how the software develops these patterns. It's developed in a way where you should have incremental stretch throughout the whole pattern itself, okay? So we're at point C, we're going to move to point D. A little bit of stretch. Right to the tippy tip. Just like that. Perfect. All right, so that's tacked. There's a little bit of film on the edge to wrap into the actual corner of the fender over there, as well as this overhang over here as well. That's going to wrap right under, okay? And that is what we want, because this is a pretty hard leading edge over here and it can get chipped up pretty easily, okay? So now what we're going to do is flush out all the soap. I want to make sure that I have enough film on the top portion as well. You can see I just have a little sliver over here and a lot over here, so I'm going to pull this film upward just a bit. Okay, and after I get the amount of film I need, I'm going to go ahead and squeegee off all that solution. I'm going to work it down, because that's an easier exit point. I'm going to let gravity help me out with this. Just like that. Boom, boom, boom. And then I'm going to do a hard squeegee on all these body lines, because that's typically where water gets trapped very easily at. There we go. All right. Right there is a piece of contamination. Within that 5 minutes of getting the film onto the car, completing the installation, there's a speck of contamination right there. Luckily, we caught it. We can get to it right now. And it's a fender. It's not like a hood. I don't have to go through 5 feet of film to get to a speck of contamination like we would on a hood installation. So I'm going to lift up the film just to the point where the contamination is. Okay? And you can see the water is bleeding through again because it's such a fresh piece of film that we just installed. I'm going to go ahead and clean off my finger. And then I'm going to go in there and try to get that contamination removed. And then I'm going to go ahead and do my squeegee, work it down. All right, guys, so I went ahead and did a final inspection on the fender that we just worked on. Not seeing any other contamination. Now it's time to go ahead and flush out all the edges with our tack solution, get all the soap residue out of there so we can start wrapping the edges like we did on the A-pillar, okay? Just one last thing about that contamination right there, okay? That was a great example on how we can catch something and prevent it, right? The contamination was large enough for us to see during the installation and easy enough for us to remove it. Now let's say that piece of contamination was in the center of the hood over there, and we've had that hood on there for about 5-10 minutes now. you're probably going to have a worse off looking hood, more contamination happen, and a lot of adhesive stretch trying to chase after that one piece of contamination on the hood. All right, guys, so we are done for today. We will pick this back up tomorrow, where after all the film is dried out, we'll wrap all the edges, do our final trim and heat lock on the areas that we've installed, and then hopefully, if I have time tomorrow, which is going to be Sunday, move on to the front bumper for this video, okay? It really just depends. I got some errands I have to run tomorrow for the family. So with that in mind, we did a great job, all right? Everything went really, really smooth. We had a little bit of contamination here and there that we were able to take care of, thankfully, on the fenders. But besides that, everything else is looking spectacular. It's all about dry time now, just letting this film dry. You could speed up the process with an air blower or a hair dryer, but since we do have the time just to leave it overnight, come back in tomorrow morning and take care of the wrapping of edges and heat locking, we're just going to do that. So with that in mind, we'll pick up in a few moments tomorrow. Good morning, everybody. Happy Sunday. We are on day 3 with the Ford Mustang, more so day 2 because we've been working partial days on it since it's been dropped off. But we are at the stage of final PPF prep. What that consists of is wrapping, trimming, heat locking, doing all the finalization of everything that has been laid down. Of course, we still have to put in the vents and lay down the front bumper and headlights, but we will be doing that on Monday since I don't have too much time today. I have just enough to go ahead and wrap and do the final touch-ups on what we have laid down. So we're gonna start, like always, from the top and work our way to the bottom. I like doing this when it comes to final PPF prep because it ensures that I don't miss any spots throughout the process. I start from the A-pillar, move on to side mirror, and then work my way around all the film that's been laid down. So let me bring you guys in and start with the A-pillar. All right, guys, so we got our A-pillar over here. The first thing I need to make sure of is making sure I don't have any excess film anywhere, okay? And what do I mean by that? I don't want any film hanging over edges that it can't bond to. I don't want film rubbing up against rubber gaskets that are gonna push up against that film and make it lift over a period of time. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take my thumb and I'm just gonna go ahead and flatten all the edges of the film, okay? It's the first thing I'm gonna do. I'm gonna get over here on the inside. I'm gonna get over here at the bottom, make sure all those edges are nice and down. Then I'm gonna use my eye to take a look at those edges. What you wanna be looking for is what we like to call kind of like silvering of the edge of the film. And what that is an edge that hasn't been completely laid down. Now that's completely normal because you will have to put heat on all these edges, and what that heat does, it softens the film, it activates that adhesive even more so when you put a little bit of pressure with your finger on it, it stays down permanently and doesn't lift back up, okay? So in order to do that, I'm gonna go ahead and take my torch over here or a heat gun. It's a personal preference at the end of the day. And after I've used my finger to lay down everything to the best of my ability, that's when we're gonna start putting some heat on it. Another thing to keep in mind, if you do have to do any trims, meaning you have any excess film anywhere, you wanna do that before you put heat on it. Reason being, the heat does soften the film just slightly and makes it a bit more difficult to do a precise trim. So we wanna make sure that we trim everything that we need to trim off prior to putting heat on it. This A-pillar looks good, doesn't need any trimming, so I'm gonna start putting some heat on it. I'm gonna start from the top. I wanna be a few inches away. Basically where the tip of that flame is where I want that heat to be on the edge of the film that I'm working on, okay? Same thing over here on this edge. And I'm just working in about 1 foot sections. I do not wanna go all the way down and all the way up, because by the time you go all the way down here, this film is pretty much cooled off over here, and putting that pressure on it is just gonna be a waste of time. So I'm just gonna do little 1 foot sections, back and forth, keeping that flame moving, just like this. And then I'm putting a little bit of pressure with my finger, making sure we put that edge of the film all the way down, okay? I'm gonna go back from the top over here, get this edge that's wrapped around, perfect, and get the interior edge that we wrapped inward to make sure to protect that A-pillar on the inside, just like that. And then also this bottom edge over here, and since I can't reach that bottom edge, it's all the way inside that fender, I'm gonna take a little tuck tool and do it with that instead. This takes a little bit longer, but at least I can get it all the way down and I can actually reach it, make sure that edge is completely down, doesn't lift up and collect contamination in the future. Okay? Perfect, that's looking good. Beautiful. So this A-pillar is pretty much heat locked. Now A-pillars are pretty much the easiest thing to trim up and heat lock. There's not too much trimming that needs to be done 90% of the time, and it's a pretty straightforward heat lock. Let's go and move on to side mirrors and then the fender. All right, so time to heat lock the side mirror and do any final trims that we need to do, right? So one thing to take note of, we had to do a bit of stretch on the side mirror to conform that film to. Side mirrors are going to be the most common things to come back to and find fingers and excess film that you need to either put down or trim off, okay? Let me give you an example. This side mirror has been sitting on this vehicle overnight. I'm gonna go ahead and turn it around. You can see on this corner right over here, we have a little bit of a finger. We also have that silvering I was talking about over here on the edge of the film that's not completely laid down. We have another finger over here at the bottom. I don't know if you guys can see that. And then over here, we have another finger as well. Luckily, these are all easy fingers to put down. They're not there because of excessive tension or pulling of the film. They're just naturally there because of the curvature of the panel that we're working on, okay? So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna turn this side mirror around so we can see. I'm gonna take my finger, I'm gonna push these fingers down with my finger. Haha, see what I did there? Same thing with the silvering on the edge. I'm gonna push that down. I want to make sure I want to get as much as I can down naturally with just the heat of my finger before I start putting heat to it. Get another finger over there. That one's a little bit tighter, but shouldn't be an issue. Goes down perfectly fine. Just like that. Same thing over here. I'm going to push that finger down. Just like that. Boom, boom, boom. So we got all those fingers down. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my torch and start from the top and start heating up the edge of the film to make sure none of that film comes back up on me again. One thing to be careful of, you have plastic molding on the outside and the bottom half. You want to be very gentle with the torch. You want to make sure it's precise on the film area that you're working on, and you don't want to keep it on there for too long. Last thing you want to do is melt the plastic, because then you just have to replace the whole thing, okay? So, when it comes to using a torch and a heat gun, there is really no safer option. The heat gun can cause just as much damage as a torch does. And you're probably asking yourself, why do you got to do this? Well, if we don't do this, the film is just going to come back up if we're not heating up those edges and making sure that adhesive activates and bonds to the surface on the edge, okay? It's the most important spot. Your film is not going to lift up from the center of the application. It's going to lift up from the edge of the application, whether it be wrapped or not wrapped. So something to keep in mind. So I'm going to take my torch. I'm just going to be moving a nice, good pace motion. Remember, just work at one small section at a time to keep that heat concentrated when you put your finger down. And I'm going to move on to the interior edge over here, excuse me. Same thing. Get my finger down, just like that. And then I'm going to work this bottom section real quick. Boom, boom, boom. Open this up a little bit, get a better view on the inside. Right there on that corner is what I'm working on now. I'm going to put a little bit more heat there because we had a bit of a tighter finger that we were dealing with. Same thing over here on this bottom. All right, I'm going to bring it back around. I'm going to get this section. You can see I'm moving really quick with it. I'm not spending too much time. It's just a flash heat and then a finger and then you're set to go, okay? So that side mirror is heat locked as well. Moving on to the fender. All right, guys, so now it's time to work the fender. As you can see, we have a lot of exposed film over here that we still need to wrap on the top, on the underbody over here where the wheel arch is, and the interior of the door panel as well. Something to take note of, if you're ever getting quotes on paint protection film application and you're looking to do a full front, I'm gonna tell you right now, 90% of the shops out here, specifically in Arizona, do not wrap this interior portion of the door. How do I know this? I've seen so many of our competitors' cars come through for ceramic coatings after film is done or maybe just regular maintenance washes, and we always find a lack of wrapping over here on this inside edge and even at times on this under edge over here where the wheel arch is. Why we want to make sure to avoid that is because a lot of dirt and grime collects over here in these portions, and if you don't have them wrapped on the inside, that leading edge that's on the outside of the panel that you can see is going to look disgusting over a period of time. That's why we always wrap both this wheel arch edge and the interior edge over here that meets the door, okay? So that's something that we just take a little bit more time to do to get wrapped for you and extend and use a bit more material to make sure we get coverage there, okay? But we're going to move on to wrapping these edges real quick. First thing I want to do is lift up the hood, get a little bit more access on there, just like that. And now I'm going to go ahead and just start from the top and work my way down. Again, like I said, we're just going to take a finger over here and get all these edges down with the finger initially before we put any heat on it, okay? I want to make sure that I don't overheat the film prior to trying to maneuver that film underneath the edge rather than on top. Okay, so right over here we have that exposed film that's meant to go inside the edge. I'm going to take my finger and I'm going to start from the top, the painted portion, and little by little I'm rolling it in to that leading edge, okay? Same thing over here. We have the film, you see that right there? I'm going to take my finger, start from the top, and I'm gradually just going to go on the inside, okay? If I just try to take my finger and start from the inside and push that film inward, what's going to happen is the film is going to crease itself and bond with itself, almost like an envelope, almost like a folder, okay? And that's what we're trying to avoid. I want to start from the outside and work my way inside throughout the whole edge wrapping process, okay? Now for this portion of the fender over here, you can see right over here that exposed film. I don't know if you guys can see that. Maybe I can get a tweezer real quick. Bring you guys in. See that? That's what I want to make sure we get down all the way. Perfect. And then this portion over here of exposed film, that's going to wrap all the way on the inside to get complete coverage on this front portion of the fender. Same thing over here on the corner, the tippy tip. Get my finger there. Boom, boom, boom. That's going to wrap perfectly around. All right, guys, so now we got the top, we got the wheel arch portion, we got the front clip of the fender. We're moving on to the most challenging area to wrap over here, okay? And that's going to be the interior portion where it meets the door. The reason why this is challenging, there's not a lot of space. You can't really see very well on if you are wrapping it properly. So it's all about feel and technique during this process, okay? And we work it section by section. Especially on a fender like this where you have these hard corners and edges, what we need to do is actually trim some of this material out so it doesn't bunch up on us and finger up. And I'll show you an example of a finger right now on the screen so you have an idea of what I'm talking about. If you have too much film and it doesn't have a relief cut on the inside, essentially what's going to happen is that film is going to bunch up and make a finger, and then what you have to do is excessively heat that finger down. It doesn't leave a very nice look on the inside and has the potential of lifting as well. So what I'm going to do actually is I'm going to go ahead and take a tweezer real quick, try to catch the edge of this film, just like that. I'm going to hold on to that nice and tight. Then I'm going to take my blade right here, and I'm going to go ahead and make a V cut exactly where this body line is over here to get rid of that excess, just like that. I'm also leaving a very small amount of film still, so the corner is completely covered and wrapped as well. But after I make that V cut, I'm going to cut this portion off, just like that. Hopefully you guys can see. I'll get a close-up shot on it as well. But you can see how we cut all that excessive film over there for us to wrap in properly. Alright guys, so now that I've made those V-cuts, I'm just going to open up the door a little bit more so I can wrap all the edges. I'm going to start from the top. I'm going to go ahead and get these all wrapped on the inside, okay? Just like that. And there might be areas I cannot reach with a finger. And you can see how that V-cut still completely wraps the edge of the fender over here on the inside, but it's not going to leave a finger behind. It's going to fold in just like a folder, just like that. We'll do the same thing over here and just roll that film on the inside of the fender, and it's going to leave us a nice clean finish on the outside and also on the inside, preventing any excessive amount of film from coming back up on us. All right, guys, so now we're going to move on to the hood. We went ahead and wrapped all the edges on the fender of the passenger side. Going to give it a little bit more time on the bottom before we start heat locking because it's still a little bit wet. But now we move on to the hood, which is the same exact concept. We want to make our V-cuts on all the corners so we don't have fingers bunching up. But the second thing we need to look at is look at the length of the film of excess that we're dealing with on the edges. Is it too much? Is it too little? That's what you have to pay attention to. If you have too little, you might run the risk of that film lifting back up because it doesn't have enough adhesive to bond on the inside, right? That's not what we're dealing with here. Now we have to take a look if we have too much. Typically, about 1/4 of an inch or a little bit less is going to be the perfect amount to wrap on most edges of most hoods on the market. So if I bring you on the inside over here of the hood, you can see the molding lines over here where the metal is bent and it's connected to the under panel of the hood. We want to make sure we have just enough film for that molding line, just like that. You see how I wrap that around? It's right there on the molding line. That's what I'm looking for, okay? So right now our initial cut is pretty much the perfect amount of film to make sure we don't go over this molding line. If we do go over this molding line, what's going to happen is that valley is going to start popping up, and little by little it's going to start feeding into the rest of the film as well. So this is what we're looking for, okay? You see how perfectly it lines up right there? That's the amount of film that you need on this specific hood. At times it's okay to go a little bit over because when you put your heat in there, the film is going to contract a little bit and kind of mold into that valley. But if you have way too much film, let's say this film line was not here but all the way over here, it's going to start lifting and collecting dirt and contamination. It's going to start to lift after a few years of install. So something to take note of. Now, of course, when it comes to this recommendation, there is a little bit of leeway, okay? If you have a little bit too much or a little bit too little, it's not a big deal. When we heat lock the edges, that typically takes care of all those issues. But if you have way too much and too much excessive film on there, you might run into lifting issues in the future and dirt and contamination collecting underneath the wrapped edges. So just something to keep in mind. You want to keep it around the ballpark that I showed you right there. All right, guys, so I usually prefer doing this with the hood up, but it's going to give you guys a better angle on these V-cuts I'm going to make over here. So I'm going to go ahead and grab my tweezers. I'm going to take my knife as well. I'm going to steady my hand with the hood over here, okay? And I'm going to go ahead right over there, right on the outside of that corner on one side and right on the outside on this side. And I'm going to keep a little bit of tension on my tweezer and then just make a cut right in the middle, okay? That's how it's going to look like right there. There's still plenty of film to make sure that edge is going to get wrapped and completely covered and protected, but it won't finger up on the bottom. Let me show you another example over here. I'm going to go ahead on the corner, grab it with my tweezer, make a little tension. I have the tripod in the way, so I got to steady my hand with my other hand. Right on the outside of that corner, I'm going to make my cut. I'm going to take my knife with a little bit of tension. I'm just going to slice across this way and pull just like that. Okay, so there's your V-cut right there. I'm going to take my finger to wrap this edge. Boom, 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 corner down, bring it on the inside. You can see we don't have any excessive fingering that we're dealing with. I know it's kind of blurry, but that's looking perfect. Same thing over here. Get that corner covered, get the film on the inside, just like that. Perfect corner wrap right there. Same example with the hood open. Those are our V-cut examples on each corner. And then moving on to this section over here without the V-cut. See that finger starting to happen right there. Same thing over here. All right, guys, so we went ahead and made all of our V-cuts around the corners. Now it's just time to go ahead and wrap up those edges, okay? I want to make sure to do exactly what we did last time. Start from the top and roll that film on the inside so it doesn't cause any creasing or binding on us, okay? So I'm going to do that all the way through on the hood. Get this whole hood wrapped up. All right, got all the edges wrapped under the hood. It is looking pretty. See a nice seamless finish on the hood install. Took a look at our vents as well. Everything is looking great. All the edges are laying down real nicely. So all we got to do is heat lock all the edges that are exposed over here, put some paint protection film on the vents, and then slap on the vents and bolt them in. And the reason why we want to heat lock this, especially on the hood, is because heat comes from under and from top from the sun. And if we don't preheat it and make sure that adhesive bonded properly, it can start lifting up that film in time. So that's why we want to take that extra precaution and get all these edges heat locked. But something else we need to take care of, I don't know if you noticed some of these bubbles here and there. One right there. There's a little moisture pocket right here. We want to go ahead and grab our syringe and take care of a lot of these bubbles. Now, most of these just go away naturally during the cure time of the paint protection film. Paint protection film does like heat to a certain extent, and it starts to gas out and release all these air pockets and moisture, but we like to do a little bit extra just so when our customers walk around the vehicle, they don't see a bunch of bubbles lying around during the final walk around and inspection. So let me show you how we take care of all these bubbles real quick. All right, guys, so right here I have a fresh 8mm 31 gauge syringe, very, very small. Now, you're probably saying, what, are you gonna poke holes throughout the whole hood and all the PPF just to get these air pockets out? And the question is yes, and it's perfectly fine because this hole is so small that the self-healing ability of the film, when it does experience a little bit of heat from the sun, is just gonna encapsulate that hole again and it's gonna completely disappear. So we got a fresh needle over here, and what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna bend it towards me just a little bit, just so I have an easier time poking through the film. And what we're going to do is I'm going to take my thumb, I'm going to start where that moisture is and push it to one side and create a little bit of elevation on that bubble, okay? And then I'm going to take my syringe and just do a gentle poke inside the film. You can already see some of that moisture coming out. I'm going to suck that water out as I'm moving my thumb closer to that entry point of the needle. And that completely goes away. And you can already see just a little bit of heat with my finger, that hole completely goes away. So you don't have to worry about it. The sun and the self-healing abilities of the film completely removes that little prick from the needle, and then you're all set to go. Good morning, everybody. We are back with the Mustang GT to go ahead and finish up the full frontal application. So if you've been watching the video, you've already seen we've applied most of the paint protection film on the vehicle piece by piece throughout the weekend. Now it's time to finish it off with the front bumper and headlights over here. The front bumper and headlights, of course, have been sitting for some time, so we're going to go ahead and give them another IPA wipe down and good cleaning, making sure to get rid of any kind of dust or contamination that's been collecting on there. So let's go ahead and jump into that, okay? All right, guys, so we got the Mustang up in the air just to make it a little bit easier to go ahead and install everything. But first thing I'm going to do is just wipe down all the residue and everything on the front end. So remember when I told you we like to work paint protection film applications starting from the top and working our way down. Reason being, all that residue, dirt, grime that collects, it floats down. Gravity, I'm sure you know about it. But we're going to go ahead and wipe down everything with a little bit of isopropyl alcohol. We're just going to spray it onto the surface section by section and get everything cleaned up from all the soap residue that we had from the hood installation and the fender installation. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and install the headlight real quick on the Ford Mustang. You can see I cut out the pattern just to make it a little bit easier and minimize the distance to the vehicle when it comes to removal and installation. I'm going to peel up my paint protection film, spray it down my slip solution, just like that. And of course, we've already cleaned the headlight and did a nice swipe with the solution as well. And now we're going to go ahead and get this applied to the headlight. One thing that you'll learn, headlights are typically the easier portion of installation. Some of them can get kind of weird when it comes to certain vehicles like Subarus and those big trucks like the GMC Sierras and Chevy Silverados, just because of the intricacy of them. But generally speaking, headlights are pretty easy to install. I'm going to go ahead and get it lined up, and then we're going to go ahead and do an incremental stretch. So essentially what I'm looking for is I want to make sure that this corner closest to the fender over here is lining up, and then this arch over here is going to line up along with that, and just stretch it in place where it needs to be so we can get some nice coverage and have it looking good. And one thing that you will notice about headlights, generally speaking, They do take a bit longer to tack because you're basically applying a plastic. It doesn't have the same surface tension as a clear-coated painted surface, so it does like to move around a little bit more on you. So you want to maybe use a little bit less slip and a little bit more tack, and leave the film on there a bit longer before you start making any intricate pulls to get to your next point of the headlight. So I'm going to wait for this to tack. It's still moving around a little bit on me. Lift it back up, put a little bit more tack solution underneath there so that adhesive can start grabbing. Take my finger, I'm just going to see how that adhesive is looking. We're almost there. Let that sit for a little bit longer. And what I'm going to do, I'm just going to hold this gently just in case. I'm going to pull to the next section. I'm going to throw a little bit of tack underneath here. Use my palm to hold the initial tack point that I made. Now, I'm going to line up this portion over here, but also out of the corner of my eye, I want to see where this corner is going as well. Because sometimes things can deviate on you, right? So this is looking pretty good right over here, but I could see I have a good amount of access over here. So I'm basically pulling and also rotating downward with the pull is essentially what I'm doing. And that's going to get everything to line up really, really well. So then I'm going to go ahead and squeegee this portion after I see everything is lining up pretty good. And then I'm going to start tacking my end corner after that falls into place as well. And then I can go ahead and squeegee out all the rest of the residue that I'm dealing with. Make sure to lock that top corner so contamination doesn't come through and fall inward. I have a little bit of a finger over here, but you can see it's not a tight finger. The beginning of the finger is like a U, so I'm not worried about it. So if it's more so of like a triangle and very sharp, that's something you're going to want to worry about. But this is a very easy finger to get down. All right, so I got a couple little fingers over here, and like I said, film doesn't like to tack as much in the beginning on headlights, so we're going to let those dry, and after those dry, these fingers will go down very easily. But that's pretty much a simple headlight installation step by step. All right, guys, so went ahead and finished up the installation on the headlights and also side indicators. Now it's time to move on to the main bumper portion. So with this bumper specifically, it is going to be 3 pieces, okay? You have your initial top piece that meets the hood over here. Then you got your main portion down the center that goes around the headlights and the side indicators and the vents. And then you have your final portion right over here by the front splitter. This is going to be the best and most optimal way to go ahead and get film installed on a bumper of this complexity, okay? Most bumpers on the market, like Teslas and stuff like that, we are able to get it down within 1 to 2 pieces. But a bumper like this with a lot of these vents, it will have to be a multiple piece type of bumper. Reason being, there's a lot of tension points, deep valleys, things of that nature. And we're trying to find a balance between coverage, making sure the film lasts a very long time on the vehicle and still aesthetically pleasing. And luckily with the Mustang, most of the seam points where one piece meets with another piece is going to butt up inside the valley, which is not very visible to the eye unless you get up close and personal to it, okay? Now, let's start off with the top piece and work our way down. One thing to take note of, we do have a limitation to wrapping edges on some of these vehicles over here on the top because of mold lines from the plastic manufacturing process. So let me bring you guys up close and personal and show you exactly what I mean. All right, so typically, the most optimal situation is we want to make sure we wrap this top edge, right? So we can get a seamless finish. Now, if I bring you in underneath this gasket over here and up close, you'll see, maybe from this way, see that mold line right there? That valley that's created by the mold of the plastic and how my nail's catching on it? See that? Right there, that's run all the way through this top piece. If we try to wrap this top portion of the bumper, what's going to happen is that mold line will not let that film bond properly, and it's going to create a nice big valley all the way through. It's going to leave an air gap, and sooner or later, contamination, dirt, water is going to start seeping through the exposed corner of the film all the way through that mold line that's causing that gap within the film. So in this case, this scenario, we will not be able to wrap this top portion of the film because of that mold line. We see this very often with Mustangs, Toyotas, even sometimes on Teslas when you get to this portion of the bumper over here on Tesla Model 3s and Ys. The mold line of the plastic hasn't been shaved down and sanded down properly before the paint job and creates a nice thick line right over here on the edge. So if you do try to wrap all the way through, you're going to have that big valley of air that's going to run across, and that's going to cause contamination, lifting issues in the future. So sometimes it's better off just to butt it up against that mold line and call it a day, and honestly that's going to look better in the long haul as well. All right, so now what we're going to have to do is find our initial tack point and make sure we do the proper amount of stretch. So I'm going to pull this film this way real quick because we've done these bumpers many times before, and I know we're going to have to meet this corner over here. This excess film is going to wrap downward to cover the front clip, which is the most important part, one of the highest impact areas. And this flap over here is going to feed through this deep valley and then butt up with our other piece over here, okay? And I also want to make sure that my alignment on top all the way through is looking good as well. So I'm going to go ahead and tack my checkpoint, that top edge in the corner. And you can see a chip right there that we touched up. I'll put a little bit of hot water or a tack solution and get that adhesive activated. And then I'm going to spray a little bit on the bottom so I can go ahead and get that to wrap in and tack as well. And then I'm going to use my thumb to do my initial wrap, and then my squeegee to go ahead and finish it off. And I'm also paying attention to my alignment down there as well. I want to make sure I don't have any overhang that I'm dealing with and everything is lining up properly, both top and bottom. So you can see when I did my squeegee, it shifted my corner a little bit. Get some tack right there just to make sure I can realign it, get it tacked down so it doesn't shift on me anymore. Now, what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to stretch this film from this point to that point over there. That's our incremental stretch. So there's a little bit of tension on this front clip, and that's going to wrap inward and line up this way. You could tell if you get your line up done properly, if you just take this front portion of the clip, the film that's supposed to go there, push it downward, see where it falls. If you're getting way too much overhang onto this black piano piece and it's not laying down on the blue painted portion, that means your film is shifted too far downward, okay? But right now, everything is looking really good. And you can also tell by the top portion over here if that's lining up properly as well. And I'm going to go ahead, put a little bit of tack solution on my final tack point, and I'm going to make my stretch to that corner, get that coverage I'm looking for. Need a little bit more tack. It's bouncing back on me. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to stretch from the back, and when I get where I want my film to be, the exact position, I'm going to bring my hand, and I'm going to use the heat of my hand to get it to tack properly for me, okay? But I'm using my left hand to stretch and my right hand to do the final alignment and use the heat of my fingers to tack. And I'm going to grab my squeegee after I get it lined up and squeegee out that moisture. That's going to tack on me really well. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and maneuver this film either up or down to get our line up, right? You could see, because of the tension, the film is wanting to kind of slingshot upward, right? So I'm going to have to shift that down, and typically if you start from the middle, your left and right will all fall into place very easily, okay? So I'm going to move on to this side. I'm going to put a little bit of hot water and a little bit of tack on the top and bottom portion over here. And then I'm going to do my shift. I'm going to make sure everything is lined up properly the way I want it. And I'm going to use my finger over here to make sure that film doesn't shift back up. I'm going to go ahead and just do a very light squeegee, just like that. in the center portion. So after I do my macro adjustment, I can go ahead and do my micro adjustments over here, left and right. Sometimes it just falls perfectly. I'm going to use my finger just to make sure we don't have any film sticking out of the edge over here. And you can see this portion is pulled a little bit too far down. So I'm going to pull that up and use the heat of my finger to kind of get that to grab a little bit. Just like that. And then again, if you want to test it out, just take the excess film that's supposed to wrap forward, push it down, and if it's falling right on the edge where you need it, your lineup is perfect. And then I'm going to go ahead and just squeegee this. Just like that. And just be mindful when you're squeegeeing, because if that adhesive is not completely tacked and it's a semi-tacked, sometimes it's the motion and friction of the squeegee grabbing onto the top of the film might shift your film down, especially if you don't have your solutions mixed correctly. But generally speaking, if you get your slip solution on point based off of the paint you're working with and the temperature that you're working in, most of the time when you're doing your squeegee and you do that white, it's going to grab pretty well so that film doesn't shift on you. Now we're going to replicate the same thing on this side. I'm going to use my finger just to make sure everything's lined up properly. I have to shift up just a little bit over here. Get that tacked down. And I'm going to go ahead and tack this just like that. All right, so now it's time to go ahead and do the removal from the backing sheet for the bumper. And I'm going to show you guys how I like to do it solo. So first things first, I'm going to go ahead and spray a little bit of slip solution just like we did on our hood to create a little bit of tension underneath the backing. This time though, the actual paint protection film is facing upwards, not downwards. Reason being, we have a lot of cuts, we have a lot of intricate things that we have to lift off before we take it off the backing, okay? So I went ahead and sprayed it down. I'm going to lay it nice and flat. Then I'm going to clean the top portion of the film really well. Spray that nice and good. Grab my squeegee, get that squeegeed off. I'm also going to squeegee all the surrounding areas of the table I'm working on, just in case. Perfect. I'm going to shift this upward, just so I can squeegee this last final piece. Perfect. All right. And now what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and little by little lift off this whole piece of film from the backing and get it soaked with our slip solution. So when it's all loosened up, we can just do a nice simple pull and take it off the backing and apply it to our bumper, okay? I'm also going to spray down my bumper real quick. And I'm also going to get my squeegee ready as well, because as soon as I lift this up and I apply it to the bumper, gravity is going to pull it down. So I'm going to throw the squeegee in my mouth and just get that ready. Spray the film little by little. I'm going to lay that back down. Just like that. Get the other relief area over here. Just like that. Lay that back down. This method does take a little bit more time, but it prevents you from tearing the film, trying to rip it off all on one piece and try to spray it down at the same time, and gives you a little bit more leeway if you are working solo to get it off the backing and onto the car, okay? One thing to take note of, after you spray it down, you immediately want to put it back down on the backing so it doesn't collect any contamination. Also, of course, make sure that your hands are clean. And before you take that film off and you put it on, you want to make sure you got enough tack solution, you got enough slip solution, you also have a chair ready if you do want to use a chair. You just want to make sure everything you need is prepared right in front of you, because as soon as that's on, you got to start moving, okay? You got to start getting things tacked into place, because if that slip solution dries off on you, you got to lift it back up, soap it down again. It's just going to make a lot more work for you, okay? So I'm going to soap down this front bumper just one more time. Make sure I got enough slip I'm working with. And then I'm going to go ahead and lift the film and apply it to the front bumper. I'm just going to hold real quick. Use the heat of my hand to get it to tack down just a little bit. Just like that. I could adjust it where I need to adjust. I'm looking at the corner of my eye, making sure doesn't fall on the ground. Alright guys, battery died on me, got a fresh battery in the camera, but we got the bumper on. Now it's time to go ahead and start moving. What we need to do is align everything in place. We want to make sure everything is butting up correctly, the film is aligned on the bumper properly, and any kind of things that need to fold over in valleys and things of that nature are properly folded in with no excess as well. So let's go ahead and start moving. And I'm going to shift this over just a little bit so I have a little bit of leeway to move around my initial tack points over here, okay? I'm going to go and lift up this portion of the film just one more time, get it soaked down, so it's going to be a bit easier to work with. I'm going to start moving everything where it's supposed to be. So I know that I got the top portion of the bumper lined up properly, so everything is going to lay down pretty good over here. We're going to have to do a little bit of stretch and just paying attention to all the little intricate pieces that need to fall into place, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and bud this up first. And while I'm doing that, I'm paying attention to this lining up properly. I also need to make sure that this is getting complete coverage over here as well. There we go. So that's my initial tack point right there. Now I'm going to go ahead and most likely I'm going to get this relief cut over here lined up where the side indicator is for this to lay down properly as well and get rid of these fingers. And I'm going to adjust that along with the lineup at this portion of the bumper as well. All right, so let's go ahead and start moving this around a little bit. Make sure this is all going to line up right there. Okay. And now I'm going to lift this up just slightly. Make sure that's lined up. That's going to get lined up. And I'm going to use this hard edge as a checkpoint. If I get this tacked, my lineup over here is not going to go anywhere as well. Does that make sense? Get this all tacked down properly. I'm also going to verify that this is going to wrap in properly. You see that relief cut right there? These two pieces that separate right here. I want to make sure that they go inside this valley and this wraps in properly. I want to make sure I don't have too much film overhanging into this plastic piece over here. And as we can see, that's laying down perfect. So line up from top to this portion is good. So I'm going to go ahead and tack this checkpoint as well. And then essentially, I just want to make sure this is not moving around on me because we're going to do a slight stretch this way, and this is going to have a slight stretch this way. So we want to make sure this doesn't go anywhere because all the lineup is good. All right, now we're going to go ahead and get this moved around. I'm going to create a little bit of tension so this valley can start falling into place too. We also have to make sure that this is going to get lined up over here as well. Give me 1 second. Use the heat of my finger just to get that to semi-tack. A little bit more tack solution. Just like that. So as I do that, I'm paying attention to this flap right over here. I want to make sure that this is all going to cover what it needs to cover. It's slightly too much up, so I'm going to go ahead and just gently pull that down and go ahead and squeegee out that hard edge, or what I like to call my checkpoint, to make sure it doesn't go back up or down as I'm moving everything else. So now I'm looking at this. This is tacked down. I got my checkpoint over here where this portion is going to wrap, and this portion is going to wrap, and this portion is going to go in properly. Now I need to take care of this whole top portion over here. Everything is lined up good. Everything's going to wrap underneath the headlights. I need to verify that I don't have any overhang on the inside portion of the bumper, which I won't. It's lining up perfect. Now I can go ahead and squeegee this checkpoint as well to make sure nothing shifts on me, and then get this squeegeed out to my nearest exit point right over there, because none of this is tacked just yet. Now we take care of this top portion. I'm going to take my finger. I'm going to try to get as much of this air out as possible. I'm going to follow it up with my squeegee, just like that. I'm going to squeegee all that water towards the headlight. Make sure I don't have any overhang over here. Okay. So I do have some slight overhang over here on the top. Let me bring you in and show you what I'm talking about. So if I bring you in really close underneath this headlight, I'm going to grab my tuck tool real quick and you'll see what I'm talking about. See that overhang right there? That slight excess of film where there's no bumper? That is no good. You got a couple options. You can leave it the way it is and then do a trim with your knife after everything is laid down. The difficulty with that, we got a headlight in the way. I want to prevent as much trimming as possible and just get the installation right to begin with. So what we need to do is we need to take that excess film there, shift it downward this way. So we're going to have to readjust this. I know we made our checkpoints and we squeegeed it out, but we're going to lift this and shift that little bit of excess right there. What is that? Not even 2 to 3 millimeters of film we're looking out for, and shift it down to this edge over here just to make sure there's no overhang on that portion of the bumper. All right, so now we got to push this downward. You can see we're about 1/4 of an inch short from this portion of the bumper where it meets the splitter. So I'm going to have to pull this downward. I'm going to get a little bit of slip solution underneath there to make sure it moves on me good. And then right on this lower portion, I'm going to get a little bit of tack solution as well. Okay? Lift this up, get some tack on that lower portion of the film. And like we showed you on the top over here, I'm going to push down with one, and then I'm going to align with my other hand and try to use the heat of my hand to get that adhesive to start to activate a little bit more. Now I'm feeling that adhesive start to grab. I'm a squeegee. Got the line up real good right there. A little bit more of a pull over here. Squeegee that out. Perfect. And we're going to get all this water squeegeed out as well. And remember, guys, you don't got to be a little baby about your squeegee. You want to put a little bit of pressure to get that water out of there. It's nothing you have to worry about. You will not scratch or damage the film. The film's ceramic self-healing top coat is very hard and durable. It's nothing that a squeegee will cause any damage to. Okay. Get this valley down with a little bit of tack. I'm going to hold it with my finger, use the heat of my finger to get that to start to bond. Just like that. Perfect. And you can see, after we went ahead and stretched everything downward, our wrapped edge over here is looking good, giving us plenty of film to go ahead and just wrap that just enough. So this is the next section we're going to apply. We're going to go and lift it up, get some slip right underneath. I don't want to lift too far. Remember, we got perfect alignment over here in this section, so I want to leave that be. I'm just going to go ahead and soap the section down over here. Now, what we have to do is we have to stretch this film downward to butt up with this piece of film over here. And what that's going to do is it's going to create the perfect amount of tension for this portion right here to start folding inward, and also this valley to start laying down too. So not am I only trying to pay attention to butting this up perfectly, but I also want to make sure my alignment over here and the interior portion of the vent is lined up properly as well. So it's going to take a little bit of doing. That's not a problem for us. There we go. Got it. Make sure to squeegee that so I don't lose it. Okay, I'm just going to hold that there with my thumb. Push that upward. Get that all squeegeed out. Boom, boom, boom. Get this squeegeed out. Got a little tack over there. Alright guys, so we got the passenger side of the bumper generally down. We got some areas we got to let dry out before they completely tack. Now it's time to lift up, re-soak the rest of the bumper to get it lined up and do the same exact thing. Now I won't go through the whole process. The next thing I'm going to show you is this right over here, how we get that lined up, and then I'll jump to splitter for you guys because this portion of the bumper is generally the same as we did on the other side, okay? And again, we're not trying to get it completely down on this moment in time. We got to give it a few minutes for that film to start to dry out so we can get down valleys and things of that nature. I did want to show you guys something real quick, and I kind of did this on purpose for you guys. I left a piece of film connected to itself over here on this side, okay? Now, this is where film quality and adhesive quality comes into play. I hate to say names, but if this happens with something like Expel, S-Tech, and it's been on there for about 10, 15, 20 minutes, if you try to remove this piece of film from the other piece of film, your adhesive is going to completely stick together and rip off the actual paint protection film, okay? That's where your quality of adhesive comes into play. I know with our film that this is not going to be an issue, okay? I'm going to put a little bit of slip solution as I'm removing one layer from the other, and you're going to see that it comes off very easily and does not rip itself apart and damage the adhesive, causing a mark on the paint after it's applied again. I can't tell you how many times with a film like S-Tech and Expel that has happened to us, and we got to scrap the whole bumper and do it all over again. Of course, it's preventative, but at times when you're working on one side and you're really focused and dialed in, you just lose the thought of what's going on over here. Film starts touching each other, it stays there, it dries, it sits there for 10, 15 minutes, and then you ruin the whole bumper application. You got to do it all over again. We find that very frequently with films like Expel. It's happened with S-Tech as well, and sometimes that film even tears because in reality, those films aren't 8 mils thick as they say they are. So it's just something to keep in mind, guys. Your quality of film is really going to dictate how easy of an install that you're going to have as well. And the easier the install, the better the install is going to be, and the better the end results are going to be for you, the end consumer, if you are a consumer of paint protection film watching this right now. So that's just something to keep in mind right there. But now what we're going to do is we're going to lift up this film. It's going to be a little tacky because it's been sitting on there for some time, but again, as you saw, it's not going to be an issue. I'm just going to go and lift it off, just like that, section by section. Soap it down, get it back where it's supposed to be. And then I want to make sure I'm not just yanking, because we have a relief right over here. In that valley, that relief cut that I showed you previously, if we just yanked on this film, you're going to probably tear through the film if you're not being careful. So I want to grab both parts and lift from there until I release the film, and then soap all that down too. And just soap it down all the way through that front portion of the bumper, and then bring it back around and lay it down where it's supposed to be. Just like that. Now what we're going to do is do the same exact thing as last time. I'm going to focus on these tack points in this portion of the bumper right here. What that's going to do, it's going to give us a proper amount of stretch on the center portion, and then from there we're going to do exactly what we did to the top portion of the bumper. We're basically going to start from the center, align top to bottom, making sure we have no excess, and basically squeegee it out, and this whole center portion is going to go down real easy, okay? So let's go ahead and proceed with that. All right, guys, so I went ahead and lined everything up on our checkpoints over here. This is all going to be nice and easy to line up now. You can see it's already pretty much laid down where it needs to be. I'm just going to take my finger and make sure I don't have any overlap. I also want to make sure I didn't have any contamination seep through this grill portion through the center, right? We did a great job cleaning, but again, anything is possible, you know? You can always have contamination run through here. So I'm just going to inspect this area and make sure there is no contamination. After that, you're just going to go ahead and line up starting from the center, and then typically all your left and right portions are going to fall into place. So after I get this lined up, make sure the top is good, make sure the bottom is good and doesn't have any overlap. I'm just going to go left to right because I don't want to pull that film up or down, squeegeeing up or down, just like that. Get that to tack nice and good. Put a little bit of hot water right there. So make sure it activates that adhesive. Boom, boom, boom. Then I can go ahead and do the same thing to this portion over here. I'm just going to do a slight pull where I need to. Get a little bit of hot water where I need it. After I get it right where I want it, go ahead and squeegee this hard line. Get all that water out. Find an exit point. Verify that this portion has no overlap as well. Do the same thing over here. All right, guys, so got the center portion all tacked down as well. Lineup is spot on. Last thing we need to do is go ahead and move on to this driver's side of the headlight, get that all laid down the same way as we did on the passenger side. From there, we have one last piece, and that's going to be over here by the front splitter. That's a very simple piece to do, guys. It's just one straight piece. You get one portion tacked underneath this valley over here, and then you just stretch that portion and do the same lineup method that we did on this piece over here and this top portion over here, okay? So that's pretty much a bumper installation as a whole. As you can see, there's a lot of attention to detail on reading the film and making sure you're getting it where it wants to be, not where you want it to be, okay? There are times I see a lot of guys and even some new hires here at 48 Detail where they're starting off with film where they're trying to almost customize the film on their own as they're installing it, meaning they're trying to overstretch here to get it over here, and that's not what you want to do. If you feel like you're overstretching something, you're probably doing it wrong. These patterns are meant to be laid down in a certain way, in an incremental stretch, little by little, to get it to a point where they need to be, okay? Hopefully, that bumper application helped you out a little bit. For our customers out there, future customers, this gives you an idea of what we have to go through when it comes to actually installing it. On a scale of 1 to 10, the difficulty of this bumper is like a 4. It's really not that hard. It's a couple of pieces, a couple areas you need to pay attention to when it comes to tack points and stretch, but overall, it is on the easier side of installation for a bumper. Harder bumpers to do, we're talking about the new BMW M3s, Toyota Supras, those new Denalis that are coming out on the trucks for the GMC. Those are bumpers that can take up to 3 to 4 hours to install. Easily, okay? Sometimes with all the intricate grill areas that we have to do, it could be a full day worth of installation just on the front clip of the fascia on some of those trucks and some of those more difficult vehicles, okay? Went ahead and finished laying everything down on the front bumper. So from here on out, you got basically two options. You could either let it naturally dry, which is gonna take really long, or we can go ahead and use something like a hair dryer to go ahead and blow out all the nooks and crannies and get the film dried on the edges to get a lot of these valleys and edges laid down. So right over here, I just have a battery-powered Lilacs, whatever the heck it's called, hair dryer. Heather's laughing in the background. Hair dryer. I'm in the middle of recording here, okay? Anyways, we're just going to use a hair dryer, okay? You can use this your standard hair dryer. You want to make sure you keep the heat around medium. Don't go too high. And the high airflow setting is going to be your best bet to dry this out efficiently, okay? You do not want to use a heat gun. Number one, a heat gun gets way too hot. It's going to soften up the adhesive too much, increase it, and ruin the adhesive. And also, it doesn't have the airflow to dry out properly as well. And nor do you want to use a torch at this stage of the process. A torch and a heat gun is going to be your last final heat lock when all the moisture is off of the vehicle, okay? So we're going to go ahead and turn this bad boy on. I'm going to start over here, and I'm going to blow out as much water as I can. If I want to get underneath the film, I'm just going to use a tweezer to lift it up and get that film dried off. And I'm going to do this all the way around the edges, any valleys with excessive moisture in there. Any edges that I need to wrap as well, I'm going to blow out real nice. And I'm just going to move my way around the bumper. So we used our handy dandy blower to blow out all the front end over here, and it's going to speed up your drying process, okay? So rather than having to wait 3 to 4 hours for the film to naturally dry, you're only going to have to wait about 30 to 45 minutes and you're all set to go. If you do need to speed up the process really rapidly, you could spend maybe about 15 minutes blowing it out completely. But in this case, we still have a little bit of time to give it some leeway so it can go ahead and do its thing naturally while I go ahead and do a final inspection and a little bit more heat locking on the hood and the fenders as well, okay? But besides that, I'm gonna let this dry, put everything down, do any final trims I need to do, and then we'll do a final heat lock on the whole vehicle for the film application, and then we'll show you the final results. All right, guys, so the Mustang is all set to go. Everything is laid down. We went ahead and heat locked all of our edges and also did some due diligence and taking care of some bubbles here and there. But with that in mind, this is actually the worst the paint protection film is going to look. And what do I mean by that? Because this is water applied, it does have a cure time. On average, anywhere between 7 to 12 days. 7 in the hotter seasons, 12 in the cooler seasons. Right now, we're in the middle of winter, December in Arizona, so it's going to be more around that 12-day mark. So when it cures, all the moisture, leftover air, any type of bubbles is going to start to evaporate, cure, and gas out, leaving you an even better looking PPF installation after that point. But of course, during that cure time, we ask all of our customers if you do notice anything, an exposed edge, a finger, anything after that 12-day mark, feel free to give us a call so we can set up a follow-up appointment. Because film expands and contracts with different changes in temperature, sometimes things can lift up. So we want to make sure we address that before you really start putting some miles on the film and it collects contamination in a finger or something like that. It is part of the process, okay? If any company or PPF installer out there says, hey, we never do follow-up appointments because we are perfect, they are lying to you. It's either they're lying or they never really install film on cars that much, okay? Every car is different. Every installation is different. You're always going to run into something sooner or later, and that's why we always recommend to our customers, take a look at the car after the cure time, see if there's anything going on. If not, you are set to go. If you do, give us a call and we'll set up a follow-up appointment and take care of it for you. So with that in mind, during the cure time, you don't want to be washing the car either. That's very important when it comes to paint protection film. If this adhesive that is still curing and trying to semi-permanently bond to the panel that it's applied to encounters water, it's going to reactivate that adhesive again and cause lifting issues in the future. So we want to make sure when it's curing, you can drive it, you can enjoy it, you can park it outside in the sun. The film actually likes the heat. It's going to cure faster because of that, but you do not want to hand wash it, automatic car wash it, or get it into any type of heavy rainfall. That's something to keep in mind as well. So, you know, if you're a detailer or a PPF installer doing this for a customer, you want to make sure you explain this to your customer. You set expectations with your client as well. And if you're a customer, you just got to pay attention to what we are telling you during your final walk around and everything that we send out to you when it comes to service agreements and warranty information as well. It's very important. We did our part with the installation. Now you as a consumer needs to do your part when it comes to taking care of the vehicle after we do the installation. So these are things that you have to keep in mind, all right? But that's pretty much it when it comes to paint protection film install. Now that we're done with that, we can send this car over to the detail shop next door, and those boys can go ahead and get going on the priming of the paint and coating the film and the paint and the glass and all that good stuff as well. So I'll throw in some final result video clips. You're probably already seeing them right now as I explain this stuff to you. And if you have any questions, feel free to let us know in the comment section below. And if you're interested in more videos like this, make sure to hit that subscribe and like button and give us a call if you want to protect your vehicle at 48 Detailing. Thank you so much. We appreciate your support and hope to hear from you soon.